Let's try a little thought experiment. Imagine you're a fighter pilot, one of the best. Your entire life, your survival, depends on your skill, your courage, your gut instinct that's been sharpened over hundreds of hours of life or death combat. Now, imagine a weapon comes along that makes all of that, all of your experience, completely and utterly useless. We're not just talking about a weapon that wins a battle. We're talking about a weapon that rewrites the very rules of war itself. And today, we are going to dive deep into the story of that very weapon. So let's start with this quote, because honestly, it's chilling. This isn't just some random soldier. This is Adolf Galland, one of Germany's most celebrated and brilliant air commanders. And what he's describing here, it's a feeling of absolute, total helplessness. He's realizing he's not fighting another pilot anymore. He's fighting a machine that can somehow, impossibly, see into the future. To really get our heads around how he and his pilots came to that terrifying conclusion, we have to travel back to the night skies over Italy in 1944. Okay, so picture this. It's the Anzio beachhead, February 1944. Allied forces are bogged down, and every single night, the German Luftwaffe sends bombers to pound their positions. Now, for the German crews, this is a dangerous job, sure, but it's a familiar one. But on the night of the 24th, everything changes. The sky just erupts with anti-aircraft fire, but it's different. It's not the usual random barrage. This is intelligent, it's precise, it's impossibly lethal. I want you to just look at this number for a second. 58%. On that one night, out of 12 German bombers sent to attack Anzio, 7 of them were blown out of the sky. A 58% kill rate in total darkness. Now, to put that into perspective for you, a really, really good anti-aircraft crew back then might get 1 kill for every 2,500 shells they fired. This wasn't just a little better. This was so far beyond the norm, it was like something from another planet. The German High Command was, to put it mildly, completely stunned. And this is where the real psychological horror starts to set in. The pilots who somehow managed to limp their planes back to base, they came back with stories that sounded like something out of a science fiction novel. They would talk about banking hard to the left to dodge the flak, only to see a shell explode at the exact point where their new flight path would take them. They'd dive, and a cluster of explosions would be waiting for them at the bottom. It was, for all intents and purposes, as if the gunners on the ground knew what they were going to do before they even did it. So this became the terrifying mystery that haunted the Luftwaffe. You have to understand, this wasn't just a better gun or a new kind of ammunition. This was a complete paradigm shift in warfare. What in the world were they facing? What was this invisible force that could turn their most experienced, combat-hardened veterans into little more than clay pigeons? Well, the answer had the incredibly boring, bureaucratic name of SCR-584. It was an automatic tracking microwave radar system, and it was America's secret, invisible weapon. And the story of how it even came into existence is just as incredible as what it could do on the battlefield. You see, the entire breakthrough really hinged on this one single device, the cavity magnetron. It was invented by British scientists, and in 1940, during a top-secret and absolutely crucial meeting called the Tizard Mission, they handed the blueprints over to the Americans. This little piece of tech was the secret ingredient. It was the key that unlocked the world of high-frequency microwave radar, a world, by the way, that German scientists had already concluded was physically impossible to even enter. So how did this thing actually work? Well, it was a triple threat. First, it used a microwave frequency that German radar warning receivers were completely blind to, so the German pilots never even knew they were being painted by radar. Second, it used this really clever technique called conical scanning. Think of it like a spinning radar beam that could automatically lock onto a single plane and then follow its every single move with pinpoint accuracy. And third, and this is the really crazy part, it fed all that tracking data into something called the M9 gun director, which was basically a sophisticated analog computer. This machine would then make 30 calculations per second, factoring in speed, altitude, direction, even the weather, to predict exactly where that plane was going to be a few seconds from now. So the whole process looked like this. Detect a target up to 40 miles out. Lock onto it. The M9 computer does the math, and then the anti-aircraft guns, which were electronically connected to the system, would fire. That's it. Human guesswork, human reaction time, human error, it was all taken completely out of the equation. It was a simple, deadly, and fully automated kill chain. But here's the thing, right? having one revolutionary piece of technology is one thing, but being able to build thousands of them and put them everywhere, that's something else entirely. And this is where the war really stopped being just a battle of technology and became a brutal, fundamentally unfair industrial fight. I mean, just look at this comparison. This is the American SCR-584 versus Germany's best radar, the Würzburg. It's not even a fair fight. The American system was accurate to within 75 feet. The German one was lucky to get within 500. The SCR-584 locked on and tracked automatically. The Würzburg, it was manual. You had operators literally hand-cranking wheels to try and keep up. The American system could be set up in 30 minutes by a crew of 3 soldiers. The German system took over 2 hours and needed 8 highly trained technicians. We're talking about 2 completely different generations of technology.
And if that massive technology gap wasn't enough for you, get a load of this number, 2,998. That is how many SCR-584 units a single American company, the car manufacturer Chrysler, was able to build. That one company's output was more than Germany's entire radar production for the whole war. Let that sink in.
And this really gets to the core of why the Allies won the Industrial War. It wasn't just about having better ideas. It was a completely different philosophy of production. You had German engineers meticulously handcrafting these complex radar sets in small workshops one by one. Meanwhile, America was using automotive assembly lines to just pump them out by the thousands. The German systems needed highly trained engineers to operate them. The SCR-584, it was designed to be so simple that a GI with just 6 weeks of training could use it effectively. This war was, in many ways, won on the factory floor.
So this all leads to a really important question. Germany had some of the most brilliant scientists and engineers in the world. So how did they miss this? How could they be so completely blindsided by a technology that would end up systematically taking apart their entire air force? Well, the answer really comes down to one word: arrogance.
It's astounding. Just a little over a year before the SCR-584 showed up over Italy, Germany's own top radar experts officially told their high command that the very science behind it was impossible. They had done their own research, decided it wouldn't work, and they shut down all further investigation. It was a colossal, fatal scientific blunder, born from this deeply flawed belief that if they couldn't figure out how to do it, then surely nobody else could either.
And you can see the devastating price of that arrogance right here. When Hitler unleashed his V-1 Doodlebug flying bombs on London, the Allies just moved their SCR-584s to the coast. And look at these interception rates. In the first week, they were taking down about 17% of the V-1s. Not bad. But by week 4, that number had jumped to 60%. And by week 8, 74%. On one single day, they shot down 97 out of 101 incoming V-1s. The machine was learning. It was becoming more and more efficient against a weapon that many people thought was simply unstoppable. This quote from another legendary German ace, Johannes Steinhoff, is just heartbreaking. It perfectly captures that moment of dawning horror, when they realized the game had fundamentally changed. This wasn't war as they had always understood it, a contest of skill and courage and experience. It was now just an equation. You fly into a particular patch of sky, a machine on the ground does the math, and you die. Your skill means nothing.
And that was the true revolution of the SCR-584. For the first time in the history of warfare, a weapon system had effectively made the skill of its human target irrelevant. This was the turning point.
You see, the SCR-584 didn't just help win World War II. It introduced an entirely new philosophy of combat. It created the new rules of war that, frankly, we are all still living with today.
And you can see on this timeline just how fast everything fell apart for them. You have the shock and confusion at Anzio in February. Just 4 months later, in June, a few dozen of these systems create a virtually impenetrable anti-aircraft shield over the D-Day beaches. It takes them all the way until December to finally get their hands on a damaged one. But by then, it's way, way too late. In fact, that discovery led directly to the famous fighter pilots' revolt a month later, where Germany's best pilots essentially told their commanders that flying was pointless. Courage was now useless. And what's truly mind-blowing is that the SCR-584 was actually designed to track targets moving up to 600 miles per hour. That's faster than any propeller plane that existed when it was built. So when Germany finally deployed its revolutionary Me-262 jet fighter, a plane so fast it could outrun any Allied fighter, it didn't matter. It made no difference at all. The radar tracked and killed the jets just as easily as it killed the bombers. The system was, in effect, already built for the next war. And this right here is its ultimate legacy. The SCR-584 was the world's first successful implementation of the automated kill chain. This concept, using sensors and computers to take the slow, flawed human out of the decision loop, is the direct ancestor of every modern missile defense system, every anti-missile system on a naval warship, and every autonomous drone system being used today. It all started here. Which really leaves us with this final critical thought. Those German pilots back in 1944 were the first warriors in history to have their skills rendered completely obsolete by automation. They weren't defeated by better pilots, they were defeated by better machines. And as we move deeper and deeper into an age of artificial intelligence and autonomous weapons, the question this 80-year-old story forces us to ask is more relevant today than ever before. When technology removes the human from the equation, what does the future of war actually look like?